It says we're live. Let me just double check and check on the other side so that I can mute it on the other end. I wish you were in a better lighted area.
Yeah, I don't have very good lighting in my study.
That's okay. Can't be helped. All right.
No,
hey.
This one's dead, unfortunately. But anyway, it is what it is.
No, all good. Hey guys, welcome to my regular Wednesday night 8:15 p.m. live stream. Today, my guest is editor-in-chief of one of the most renowned magazines in the country and probably the world, Damien Costas. Hello, Damien.
The world.
Oh, sorry. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
I'm so pleased that you said yes to doing this. A little nobody like me. It's very kind of you.
That's fine. For the conservative movement, I'll talk to anyone. The left doesn't get the same privilege, by the way.
I kind of hoped you'd say, "Nah, you're not a nobody. You've had great guests on your channel," but you're like, "Yeah, nah, you're a nobody." But don't worry, I'm here for the conservative movement.
Yeah, I'm here for everybody. And look, I don't know you that well, but I've looked into you and I find your stuff fascinating. So I'm sure that you have a very promising future, provided you stay the course.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you to say, even though I had to push for that. No, kidding.
You push for everything.
I'm a woman. I like to be validated.
You don't want to be a woman because then you sort of start aging yourself. You want to be a girl. Be a girl until you're like 50, and then you can become.
I think I agree with that. That's a pretty good way to put it. Well, we're going to talk about this magazine which you had sent to me. Thank you so much.
Welcome. I'm glad you like it.
I did. I really did enjoy it. But before we get into the specifics of the 40th anniversary for the Australian Penthouse, let's get into other things. Well, why don't we start with how and why you became interested in working for Penthouse? And obviously the magazine started in England, but like, how did you get involved with it and why?
Good question. The magazine started in the UK in 1965. Mm-hmm. It moved to the US in 1969. So they're celebrating their 50th year this year. And it came to Australia in 1979. And then from there, it changed hands just once. I think the people that brought it to Australia were... I think they disappointed Bob Guccione, who owned the magazine and started it at the time. I think it changed hands in 1980, and it was the same publisher for 34 years. In 2014, I used to advertise in it because I had a network of websites for adult dating, which I built the software for when back in 2009, 2010. We were doing quite well. And they sent me an email saying, "Oh, we're gonna close in January of 2014." And I thought, well, why would you close? That's just silly. I mean, the magazine's okay. It's not that good. I mean, I didn't like what they were producing at the time.
Because it was really sexualized. Because I would have to do with that.
Oh, the magazine was terrible. The magazine's gone through a really interesting journey, which I can get into in a second.
Yeah, get into that in a moment.
But yeah, so basically, I just stepped in and said, "Look, I'll take it over." At the time, the CEO in America was a woman named Kelly Holland, and she took an instant disliking to me. And it was actually a love-hate relationship. I love Kelly. She's a great woman. We get along really well. She's no longer the CEO. Unfortunately, but she thought that there was something there, so she gave me the license to continue with. Oh, the lighting's better all of a sudden. There you go. She gave me the license to continue, and I just took it over from there because the business was losing money. The problem we had was that we were told the business was losing in the order of $20,000 a month, which was nothing. We could handle that. It was a case of...
Yeah, give me some.
No, well, I mean, in comparison to what we were making, it wasn't an issue. It was just a case of fixing it up. I mean, it was very poorly run, towards the end because the publishers had lost interest. They'd already sold all their other magazines. They owned Mad Magazine. They owned Inside Sport. They were very wealthy people, and so I took it over. But what they didn't realize is that how many people were actually inside the organization stealing from it. It was just it was a mess, and it was actually losing $92,000 a month. And so I looked at my then business partner, and he just said, "This is too hard. We can't turn this around. You need $1 million and 5 years." And I said, "Well, I'll do it. I don't mind." So I took it over in my own right, and sort of jumped on the journey of fixing it. And the one thing I did was take it back to what it was. So the reason
what was it? Because currently currently the magazine is full of fantastic articles and political pieces. So what do you mean you're taking it back to what it was, when what it was was
that's what it was. So when Bob started
really?
it was you got to understand the social and cultural movement that was coming through the West back in the 60s. It was the sort of the burn the bra movement. It was the second wave feminism. The pill. There was all sorts of things coming through. It was very much. It was the free love movement of the 60s, and government was becoming increasingly authoritarian in the West in many ways, and so Playboy had started it back in the 50s by publishing really, really out there sort of pieces, which were considered, at the time to be, avant-garde, I suppose is the word you can use. In fact, Hefner went to jail for printing the work of a black man. It was fascinating when you look at his history.
I hate Hefner about that. That's good that he printed the work of a black man, for sure.
Well, no one else was allowed to do it. I mean, they had the equivalent of apartheid. In America, and so Guccione jumped on that bandwagon, and he did the same thing. And so he took on government. He took on, he took on what was the authoritarian right at the time, the religious right that was sort of, they were what the left are doing now. They're trying to silence everybody instead of calling you racist and bigots, which they're doing now. They were calling you sinners and all sorts of other things. And so the magazine did a lot of exposés on government, all the sorts of stuff that were going on, and when Guccione, his wife died, she used to run the company for him. And when she died, he didn't do too well. And he tried to build, this is actually really interesting, he tried to build a penthouse casino in Atlantic City. And he got into business with a Donald Trump. And Donald said to him, "Don't be Donald Trump."
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, sorry, I didn't hear that. Yeah.
So Donald Trump said to him, "Go ahead and build it. I'll get the license. Don't worry about it. You just put up the money," because Guccione was one of the richest men in America at the time. The magazine to make $30 million a month profit back then in the 80s, right? So he goes ahead and builds it, and Trump keeps saying, "Keep going. Don't worry about it. I'll get it. I'll get you that license, blah, blah, blah." And in the end, he spent, I don't know, a couple of $100 million building this massive casino and no license, and he couldn't hold it anymore, and he went bankrupt.
Oh,
which is the first house went bankrupt. And Donald Trump swooped in and grabbed it for nothing and turned it into his first casino in Atlantic City.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Kind of diddled him out of his money, which was interesting, to say the least. So that was fascinating.
And we touched a little bit on, so I don't mean to cut you off, but we have several subjects we need to get through, so I'm going to have to try and get through all of them. Yeah, I don't mean to cut you off, but sorry?
It's a fascinating history. It's so long. You need like 4 or 5 hours to talk about it. But
that's people should get the 40th anniversary year. So there are some people in the chat saying that it's pornographic. Now, I don't approve of the sexual nature of the magazine in itself. Like,
can't see the chat. Hold on a sec.
I'm just trying to find a photo. But just to let everyone know, I'm actually struggling to find a naked woman in here because it's not as common as you think. It's not every single page, and it's even, the thing is, to me, pornography is not what this is. This, to me, I still disapprove of it.
I'm probably Jewish. I'm not. I'm actually Greek, but I think there's not much.
I've already told them you're Greek in the audience. It doesn't matter. This is an audience.
That's fine. I get Jewish a lot, actually. I should stop.
They default to Jew all the time. That's all they do. This audience loves to always go, that person must be Jewish.
You know, I'm not Jewish. I can assure you of that. If I have to take my pants off, I will.
Yeah. So this is like, just to show people there, that's obviously to me, that is not pure, that is not godly, that is not holy, but it's also not
pornography by definition for your audience. Pornography by definition is actually the act of sex being photographed or filmed. We don't do that.
No, which is what I'm telling the audience that's what I'm telling everyone in there. So whilst I have a right to interview you, I have a right to discuss it, I have a right to tell people that I don't think it's porn. If they want to say that's pornography, that's their misunderstanding of the definition of the word. To me, porn is penetration, it's vile sexual activity, and that doesn't.
It's the act of sex. You need two people to do that.
Absolutely.
And that's fair enough.
Yeah, use your words.
In masturbation, but we don't do any of that.
That's my whole point. So like the people in the audience making out like they know what they're talking about, they really don't.
Well, but that's okay. They probably haven't seen the magazine in a very long time.
Sorry, I'm talking quite harshly toward them because I know them and they know me. So I'm not actually like the next second if I start crying, they'll be really nice to me. I'm not saying anything.
No, that's fine.
I know I'm not being mean to them. That's just unfortunately the relationship that we have where I call them out.
I'm very happy with that, actually. No, it's not. It's the art of the nude. We use cameras to capture the female form. It's a form of expression, and they're entitled. These women are entitled to do it just as much as people are entitled to look at it. I'm not the first person to.
Absolutely, libertarianism kicks in for me.
A guy named Michelangelo did it a long time before I did, right? And he just didn't have a camera. Otherwise, if he did, he'd be using a Canon, not a paintbrush. Right, so people have been fascinated with the nude form for centuries. It's not anything new. But pornography is always a very easy target for the left and the right, because it's
more so for the right these days, I'd say, than the left.
It's always been the right. But look, at the end of the day, part of the most important part of our history and something that I'm the most proud of, even though I had absolutely nothing to do with it, was the fact that in America, the religious right under the Meese Commission many years ago tried to outlaw pornography, and they tried to water down the First Amendment, which is free speech in America, in order to do it. The story's in the magazine in this month. It was defended by a guy named Alan Dershowitz, and Bob Guccione, on behalf of the entire industry, put up his own money and took it all the way to the Supreme Court and beat it. Now, what's fascinating is that, and Alan Dershowitz says it, Bob Guccione is probably more important to the American First Amendment than anyone else.
I want to bring up what he said, but keep going, keep talking.
Well, it's in the magazine. I'm sure you're going to quote it now, but he's more important to the American First Amendment than pretty much anyone else. And what kills me is that Edwin Meese is about 100 years old now. The other day, on our 50th anniversary, just got awarded by Donald Trump a Freedom Medal.
Oh, really?
The guy that tried to actually kill the First Amendment in his own way.
Stupid. You can't get rid of the First Amendment. I wish Australia had the First Amendment, to be honest.
So do I, actually.
It won't. Yeah, so do you.
We never will. I don't think we're ever going to get a Bill of Rights, but, here's hoping.
So, guys, this is a man named Alan Dershowitz. The magazine actually does a whole entire piece on him, and these are his words that I quite like because I agree with him on this particular element. Hang on. Let me find it. This is about the right of people to decide whether they choose to see this or not. I have chosen not to see it. Many of you have chosen not to see it. Some of you would choose to see it. In China, you have no choice. They make you watch propaganda. In the United States, the government can't make you watch a film and can't tell you not to watch a film. And so I'm here to defend a film I've never seen. And that worked very well and very effectively. I'm not a big fan of pornography. I'm not either. And I wasn't a big fan of how Penthouse, he's talking about the magazine that's interviewing him himself. He's insulting them in the magazine itself. I'm not a big fan of how Penthouse in the end became more explicit, and I would agree. I found that to myself, it didn't appeal to my own aesthetic taste. Exactly. But that's not what the issue is. I defended Penthouse's right to publish those visuals, even though I didn't particularly think it was the right thing or a good thing to do. And I agree with that whole entire quote. That's complete perfection, that quote, what he's stating.
Yeah, and that end
the magazine that's interviewing him.
I think the end bit there is what's fascinating is that Guccione lost the company and it got sold to two stockbrokers And it went from doing what we do now, which is just, nude art photography, to actually making porn. And the US Penthouse still does that. They make porn. They make
you're your own contingent, yeah.
So it's not it's not what we do. It's not consistent with what we do, but I can't tell them what to do because they license me. So it's an interesting dichotomy. But he's quite right. In the end, Penthouse did go really bad, and that's probably one of the reasons it went broke so many times.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about bankruptcy. That's in my list of questions.
Penthouse has been bankrupt 5 times, I think.
Yeah.
3 times in the last 6 years. And every time they do, they hurt us because a trustee steps in. It's always someone with a different idea and all that sort of stuff. And it's hard enough trying to run the business here without all the issues that we've got. But every time, I mean, America, it was Friend Finder. When I took it over, Friend Finder owned it, and they put it through bankruptcy. Then the last time, Kelly Holland, the then CEO, she took it over, and I don't know what she did wrong because we sort of lost touch. I mean, I was doing my thing, she was doing hers, and they got 60, 70 people that work in that LA office. So I don't, I deal with my people, and that's the end of it. But yeah, she went broke, and that happened. That hit us the hardest actually last October. And what happened after that? I'm just trying to get my timeline right. She went broke. That went into trusteeship for 3-4 months, and then we had to restructure here because we weren't allowed to put out magazines. So I think we went about 5 months without putting out a magazine, and that caused a lot of problems. We had to restructure, had to shut down one of the companies that was carrying a different division. It was a long story. And then they got taken over by a Czech company, which owns X Videos, which sort of the same porny sort of world. But they're great, and I think they're back on track. We're certainly back on track. We're fine. But it's interesting. I mean, I've got a love-hate relationship with the press. They love to hate me, and especially Fairfax. They absolutely love making a mountain out of a molehill. So they call me Porn King. They call me all sorts of things. Bankrupt Porn King, etc. It's like it's all bullshit. I don't make porn. The company, yes, the company in America went bankrupt. Yes, we had our problems here, but you know what? We're still here. We're still kicking. It's our 40th anniversary, and as long as my ass points to the ground, we're going to keep kicking. Because I think the world needs it now more than ever before.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know about that specifically, but I definitely think you guys are doing your own thing, and you're battling the whole entire establishment at the moment, and the establishment currently happens to be left, and you guys are obviously going against the left at the moment, and that in itself is admirable.
We are still fighting the same fight. We fight for free speech, right? And we fight for everyone's right.
But the political spectrum has changed. Well,
we're just fighting a different enemy now. The right sort of came to their senses, and sort of they were fine. But then what happened was you got this big group of lefties that came through. They took over academia. They took over the bureaucracies, etc. Exactly. Now, and like any group, they don't want to lose power. And so when you get any ideology or any group of people that take over in a certain way, the first thing they'll do is try and squash free speech, because they do not want anyone to argue the point. They do not want anyone to overthrow them. I mean, it's a classic. Every authoritarian regime has done the same thing. I always say, when Hitler took power, what did he do? The Enabling Act, get rid of free speech, freedom of the press, and freedom of association. If people can't speak, if the press can't report it, and if you can't form groups, you can't overthrow the guy, right? Everyone's done that in some way. Every authoritarian regime has done the same thing. Now, the difference in Australia is we don't have an authoritarian regime. You've got an ideology, and these pricks stick together. And so, and the best thing with the left, God bless them, is they've actually worked out a very clever way to silence people. All they have to do is call you a racist or a bigot or a white supremacist, and all of a sudden you spend, you know, 3/4 of the time debating the fact that you're not any of those things, and only 10 minutes debating the point, in which case they win. And so, you know, and so what we do, I don't care what people call me. I really don't care. I mean, in order to insult me, you know, I actually first have to value your opinion, and I don't. So let's talk facts.
No, that's fair enough. Well, let's discuss a little bit about Milo Yiannopoulos. I think a lot of people are keen on hearing that. I myself have my own issues with the whole Milo thing. I used to love everything about him until I realized a little bit more about what he was about and how arrogant he was. But tell us a little bit about what happened with the first tour, what happened with the second tour, and obviously we'll seep onto the tickets. But before all of that, what was your introduction to Milo? What were your thoughts on him? Because I idolized the man, I'm not going to lie.
Well, it's interesting. I had no idea who he was. Let me try and go back. My editor said to me once, because obviously we do a lot of this sort of work, and we look at YouTube personalities, etc. And about 3 years ago, he said to me, he said, "You should get onto this bloke Milo. He's really funny. You'd love him because he says all the shit that you say, except he says it to audiences." And at the time, I was 2 or 3 years into Penthouse, and I was really, really proud of the work that we were doing, and I wanted the press to talk about it. And media doesn't report on other media unless it's bad. They're all assholes. And so I got to a point where I said, fine, if you pricks don't want to talk about me, I'll make you talk about me. And so I thought to myself, you know what, I might bring him to Australia, but I'm not an events person. I've got no idea what I'm doing. So we got into bed with the group. We sponsored it. And, you know, part of the agreement was that we would I'd do the opening and, you know, praise Penthouse and all this sort of stuff. So I didn't have anything to do with Milo until I never actually spoke to him until he landed in Australia in December of 2017. And even then, I had very little to do with him. I was on the tour. We stayed in the same hotels, and in some cases, we may have even traveled in the same cars. I had lunch with him once and dinner with him another time when I held a private dinner with him and Alan Jones and others.
Okay. Was that in Melbourne?
No, that was in Sydney at Benelong. And then, I mean, I found him to be a bit of a prima donna and a bit arrogant.
Fair enough.
But yeah, to be fair, I mean, I've got a lot of gay friends, and a lot of them are like that. So, you know, without being, you know, rude, you know, I find a lot of them can be a little bit like that. But, you know, he just came across as a very smart gay person, you know, who'd obviously been on an upward trajectory and had a little bit of bad luck just before he got to Australia. It did really well. We sold out. We had no idea it was going to do that well. We had no idea there was going to be riots. We had no idea of any of that stuff.
I don't think the riots could have been helped. That's just the left reacting to nothing.
Yeah, look, I mean, look, look, the riots in Melbourne, I'm not going to get into this now, but the riots in Melbourne were not the left. The riots in Melbourne were actually the Sunnis that were living in the housing trust next door. And they were egged on by the left. I saw that with my own eyes, right? And so that, you know, it's not even hearsay. It's actually really sad what happened there. But anyway, that's another story. In any event, the left, anyone has a right to protest. That's free speech. They can do that. They don't have a right to be violent, right? And they don't have a right to disrupt people's lives. They don't have a right to hurt anyone. But they do have a right to protest. And bless them, because they sold a lot of tickets for us, to be perfectly honest. So that went really well. Then what happened was a lot of the people in the right decided that, you know, this was a really, really cool way of making money because they saw the success of it. And so a few people tried to bring out other speakers, and it didn't go very well at all.
Oh, yes, I know what you're talking about, yeah.
I'm not mentioning names. I'm just, you know.
No, I know. What I mean is, like, that's true. Like, that's true, because they tried to bring him out a second time around with Tommy Robinson and all that, and that failed.
Yeah, that's a different one again. I'm talking a few other ones. But so what happened was these people decided to bring Milo out, and they went and contracted a whole heap of other speakers as well. In the meantime, I decided to do it by myself and bring out Nigel Farage.
Sure.
And so I did, and that went really, really well as well. It was a different sort of show. It was more political. It was obviously a higher brow sort of thing. The Milo was a bit more, how should we say, rock star. You know, the fire doors and all that sort of
thing. He didn't really do politics. He actually mostly tried to offend and shock and awe.
Yeah, and look, and that's fine. But the problem is, it's like
some people wanted intellectual monologue, and that's not what they got. But anyway, keep going. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, you're quite right. I agree with that. And in fact, with Milo, the problem with it, and I said it at the time, you know, if you start off with something like feminism is cancer, if that's where you start, you've got to keep going. And
yeah, sorry, that line was
more offensive, right? And eventually, you're gonna end up in a pretty offensive place, and a lot of people will get turned off by it. You know, you're better off just sort of starting small and, you know, making your points, etc. Milo chose not to do that. That's fine. That's entirely his prerogative. And ultimately, he bombed. But let's just go back to what I was saying. So what happened was they decided to bring him out. In the meantime, I'd organised. I'd been approached by a few other people to sponsor other shows, specifically Gavin McInnes.
Oh, yes, I remember that. Yeah.
And so I said, that's fine. We're happy to do that. And then we got approached by the people that were bringing out Milo for the second time. And they'd struggled to get visas and all sorts of stuff. And they'd had a bit of a falling out. And I think Milo tried to dox them or something like that. I don't know. It wasn't overly pleasant.
He shouldn't do that. That's so rude to do that to anyone.
Well, it is.
So the right shouldn't be doxing the right. I don't like that.
And no one should be doxing anybody. I mean, if you're going to have an agreement, if you're going to have an agreement with somebody to do business with them or whatever, then you should respect their privacy. That's just a agreement. But then ultimately, what happened was they came along and said, you know, do you want to buy the shows, etc. The promoter that I was working with at the time said no. I said no, not interested. The
promoter, that was the Spiller brothers, correct?
Yeah. And so Milo basically came to us and said, you know, all these people are going to lose their tickets, et cetera, et cetera. So we did a deal where anyone who bought a ticket from the Spillers would come across to the other promoter that we were working with. That was done. All those people got complimentary tickets so they could come to see Gavin McInnes, etc. And then Milo joined that tour as well. And the problem was that it was an election year and no one wanted to give anybody any visas to come in. And the Spillers had tried to get Milo in on a holiday visa, which was stupid because there was a website promoting the fact that he was actually coming to Australia. That didn't go too well. So I started putting some pressure through, obviously, the connections that we've got to try and get Milo his visa, and ultimately that would result in Gavin's visa, etc. Because everyone got knocked off. They weren't allowing any of these people to come in. Now, I don't know if you recall, last year, just before the election, Milo ended up getting his visa, and it was about 5 days before the shooting in Christchurch. And that was great. Everyone was happy. We got his visa. The show was going to go through.
And then Milo put his freaking foot in it and made it worse.
Well, I think he said something along the lines of the fact this is what happens when you let Muslims into your country or something like that. I mean, that was just a silly comment. In any event, the government. Sorry,
it's funny when it's paraphrased by someone else.
Well, I think that's what he said. I mean, it was a very.
That is what he said. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. What he did was stupid. I might agree with it, but you don't say that when you've just gotten into like the country. You should be more careful by the people that are trying to get you into another country.
I sent a message because I mean I'd worked very hard and put my neck on the line with some serious players to get that visa approved. And even the PM had to comment on it halfway through the election campaign. It was really, really, it was really sad. And so, yeah, so that was that. And then basically a letter went to all three of them saying, you're not getting your thing. In the meantime, what was really sad was the fact that since the Milo tour originally and everything else, ticketing companies were actually starting to...
But just to clarify here, you are not a ticketing company.
No. Ticketing companies. So the way...
Yeah, tell everyone how it works, because I'm getting a lot of private messages since the time that I advertised you to now saying, I need to get my tickets back. This guy's responsible for it, but you're not a ticketing company. So just explain that.
We're not responsible for it yet. We are actually working very hard. So the promoter that we were working, the company we were working with went broke. And so we are working very, very hard to take over all that stuff, because the ticketing companies won't talk to us. But generally the way it works is the ticketing companies hold on to the money. And until the show is done, and then they release it to you, because obviously there's laws around taking people's money and just running with it. And so, you know, it was a situation where that visa ultimately just killed, Milo's visa just killed the whole show. And it was a very sad thing. What we have done since then, and we were held back in a very big way because we weren't in a position to do anything due to our license being suspended from the States. So that crept up in the middle of the whole thing. It was actually a big fucking dog's breakfast. What we have done in the meantime is we've taken over the rights to all those shows. And we have since written to the ticketing companies saying we are now responsible for that, and we expect those things refunded. In the meantime, the money's just sitting there. It's very, very frustrating because we're getting a lot of messages, etc. And so to anyone that's listening, all I'm going to do is say a heartfelt sorry for what's actually gone down. We even had a ticketing company that said we don't do business with right-wing extremists. And so we're actually going to can it. And they were the best ones because they actually refunded.
Right-wing extremists according to the Herald Sun, so that's just retarded.
Yeah, it's okay. You should see the names they call me.
I did my research on you.
Yeah, well, it's okay. I don't mind. I really don't care. As long as they're not calling me a pedophile, I don't care.
They're so mean to you. But anyway.
It doesn't matter. In any event, we expect that it's going to be dealt with before Christmas, and everyone who bought tickets will be getting their money back. In addition to that, we have now taken on an events business.
Did anyone hear that? Say it one more time.
We'll have it all resolved by Christmas, and everyone will be getting their money back. In the meantime, we have actually it will be released from the ticketing companies, I should say. We're not getting it back. It'll be going back onto the credit cards that they paid for it. It won't be a cash deposit or anything like that. The other thing is we've actually taken on an events business, and we will be doing a lot more tours. We're looking at very, very interesting people. I'm not going to mention any names yet, but I think there's going to be some really cool shows next year.
Yes. And I'm going to be like 100% involved, right?
Depends on the show.
Oh, of course. If you're going to do something with porn, I don't want to be a part of it.
Oh, really?
Whoa, it went dark.
That's okay. It's my screensaver.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit more about...
Someone AG93, Steve Bannon. I would love to get Steve Bannon. Try getting the guy's phone number. Very, very hard.
Steve Bannon, yeah, well, I think he copped a lot of flack unnecessarily because of the whole Trump thing.
Yeah, well, there's only room for one cock in that roost, and that's Trump. So anyone that sort of comes up and plays alpha male in Trump's regime, I think is going to get the arse. And I think Steve Bannon's a pretty alpha sort of guy.
Oh, yeah, he's very much. Well, let's talk a little bit about your political leanings. Where do you think you sit on the political compass? Are you left, right, centrist? I mean, it sounds to me like I know you had some sort of a Christian or Catholic, I should say, upbringing. But, like, where do you sit politically now? Because, I mean, if you had a daughter, I'm positive you would not want her posing in a sexual provocative position on a man.
No, I wouldn't. But I would also say that I would like her to live in a society where she had the right to do it.
Choice is always a good thing.
Well, you can't live in a place where otherwise we're no better than Islam. When you think about it, You know, and so no, I would prefer she didn't do it. You know, I think there's far better vocations in life than that. Now, having said that, that's, you know, people might say that's hypocritical. As for my political leanings, I'd say I'm centre right. I'm definitely an economic conservative. You know, from that perspective, I did grow up in a Jesuit environment. You know, good Jesuit boy.
Good Jesuit. Fair enough.
If I had, if I had a dollar for every prayer we said. Anyway, that's beside the point. But I think that gives you good perspective on life too. You know, so it is. It
seems my interview with you has really made the righteous right. Believe that I've sold out from what I'm seeing on the other chats.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, look,
because I'm interviewing you. That makes a lot of sense. So they're not for freedom of speech. They're just for they're just for me interviewing the right people, and the right people are people who I suppose.
I think, you know, this is the thing, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm finding this out as we are going. Like I'm like,
I think I'll put it to you this way:
more emotionally balanced. Sorry, keep going.
Look, Neil deGrasse Tyson says, if you want to assert a truth, first make sure it's not just an opinion that you desperately want to be true. And so that's a very interesting way of looking at the world. And people have got their opinions. They've got they have all I'm doing if I can contribute anything to society is to make sure that people's rights to practice the religion that they want, to say the things that they want, obviously without hurting anybody, is maintained. And I think we're at a very real risk if the left keep getting their way with what they're doing, you know, from an academic perspective and from a government bureaucratic perspective, our rights are going to be taken away from us. And you know,
I agree. That's completely
true. Right now are strange bedfellows. So you know, I certainly don't consider myself you know, a hard right person. I certainly am conservative, but only on the basis that conservatism sort of starts from a sentiment that good things are easily destroyed and not easily created. And so we should conserve them. And Western society is something that should be conserved.
Well, I agree with that. I think what I don't like on the right, in the center, and on the left is Puritanism. And there's people who believe, well, I'm a better person on the right because I don't think homosexuality is right and you do. So for some reason, the person that's okay with the gay people and the person who isn't okay with the gay people, there's an internal battle already in there. Whereas, yes, I agree that homosexuality as an act, the sin itself, according to the Bible, is a sin. But I'm not going to walk around treating them like garbage, and I'm going to interview whoever the hell I like, whether they're gay or not. I'm going to treat people like a human being. I'm going to treat people right just because I believe in treating people right. But there's a puritanical nature that exists on the right. Sorry?
Did you see that recently? Ellen DeGeneres and George Bush.
I did. I was quite surprised. That did not seem like her type of thing she would ever do because she's so wrong about Trump because of how she treats Trump. So for her to treat George Bush that better surprised me. I was happy about it. I was like, oh, good on it.
She probably you know, she probably treats everybody nicely. You know, from what I'm told, she's actually a very nice person, regardless of what she does in her private life. But she at least, and George Bush is the same. Obviously, he's a very nice guy. He treats her with a lot of respect. They get along like a house on fire, even though they don't agree. You don't have to agree on everything, right? That doesn't.
No, you don't have to agree with everything. If anyone in the audience actually has legitimate, valid questions to ask, please go for it. Because you don't mind answering, do you?
I'm happy to answer whatever.
Yeah, I knew you would be. All right, well, let's talk a little bit more until we get some good questions. Oh, look, I'm such a horrible human being. That's what they're saying in the audience. Cool, awesome, thanks. Love you too. Okay, so.
But they are watching, which is good. Doesn't matter what they're saying, as long as they're talking about you.
I wanted actually to talk about another quote that I wrote it down here in my notes. How the left went free loving, peace nicks to authoritarian moral crusaders by Gideon Rosner. I was gonna say, Gideon, if you're watching this, I disagree with you. What the line should have been was how the left went free love and peace next to authoritarian immoral crusaders, because everything they advocate for is pretty much wrong. Open borders, wrong, doesn't help the country, and pretty much everything on a sexual nature, the left just does everything so wrong, and that really bothers me. But yeah, that's just something that I picked up on earlier when I was reading the.
It's by Brendan O'Neill. When nothing goes right, goes left. It was very, very much the description of that. In fact, I think I've got it here. When he turns around and he says, "Where is it? I can never find it." If a hippie lefty got into a time machine in 1979 and transported himself to today, he'd be completely bamboozled, because the left doesn't look anything like what it used to, obviously.
That's true.
And now counterculturalists don't stand up for the right to offend, as the defenders of Oz and gay news did. They just raged against offensiveness. There is an interesting person here. Scribbler Squire, Damien is a hero of free speech. How does he stay safe? At great expense.
That's my Canadian viewer. He's cool.
Oh, well, he seems to be. I think that's quite funny.
Yeah, he's not getting angry at me for having you on. He's saying it's good that I'm interviewing different people, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, and yes, I was Christian Greek Orthodox, but I went to a Jesuit school.
I had a feeling you were Greek Orthodox. I found it weird when you told me you were Jesuit on the phone.
My grandfather went to a Jesuit school in London, so he insisted I go to a Jesuit school here.
Oh, well, that's fair. Can you see that question?
What's his thoughts on Playboy trans model? Yeah, we actually put an Instagram post up when that came up, and we said we would never ever do it. I think my personal view on trans, and we've done a little bit about this, and we're going to be doing more. I think it's actually it's the trans movement actually hurts women more than it hurts anyone else. Because
they complain and nitpick at nothing.
Whilst I support people's, right to, listen, at the end of the day, let me be very crude. If a guy wants to chop his dick off and be a woman, that's his business, not mine. I don't have to put it in my magazine.
Sorry, say that last part again. You have to let who in your magazine?
I don't have to put it in my magazine.
No, you don't. Exactly.
So.
There was another question here, but it just disappeared. Let me just go up and re-find it because I thought it was a good question.
Someone switched off the. I can't see the questions anymore.
You can't see them on the right-hand side?
No, they're all gone.
Oh, that's weird. All right, there's one up on the screen.
LGBT use their right too much?
I do think they do. I think now that they have equal rights with everyone else, they're trying to grasp and get more. Not all of them do that.
Rights thing. What rights does a gay person not have that I do? I'm curious about that.
Well, until recently, marriage. But I would have said that civil union served as the same thing, and that marriage should be exclusive for male and female. But that doesn't make you less. It just makes you different. So that the answer to that.
An ecclesiastic institution, personally, but then there's a whole heap of arguments around that. I always saw it as an ecclesiastic institution. It's ecclesiastic, religious.
Yeah, no, I knew what you meant. I just didn't hear it. Let's see, Damien, will you allow photo shoots of trans? He said no to that already, so I can get rid of that one. Let's have a look. All right, there's no. Oh, there is. I don't know if that's relevant. A Zionist stooge, and do you like Russian patriarch Kirill? Do you know who Kirill is? Russian. I don't know who that is, so I can't respond.
No, can't answer that. Sorry, guy.
That's all right. What about this one here? Okay. What happened to the deplorable show with Milo and Gavin being denied visas and whatnot? I think this person has tuned in way too late. Do you want to just...
We've already described it, but the deplorables show, Milo is never, ever coming to Australia ever again. He has been banned. Gavin McInnes has not been banned, and he still wants to come out. The problem is that Tommy Robinson went to jail, and so there is no deplorable show. It's just Gavin. And so we're in the process now of just working out a new lineup. Gavin's working towards that as well. We've got someone. He's got a personal matter he needs to deal with in March, but assuming he gets over that from probably May onwards, it's going to be a very cool lineup.
So I'll have free tickets for the Melbourne show, right?
You will have free tickets. I'll get you
Yeah.
front row seats, promise.
Sorry, this is when I do all my networking. I bully the person who's doing it publicly so they can't back out.
9 o'clock on a Wednesday, good time to network.
9 o'clock on a Wednesday, yeah, exactly right. And also I will like have an exclusive interview with them on my channel. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, Gavin will do it. Gavin will talk to anyone. He's great.
Actually, Gavin spoke on one of my friends' YouTube channels, James Fox Higgins. James Fox Higgins is my guest next week. And James Fox Higgins spoke to Gavin. It was a great interview. So you're right. Not to say you're not right because it's just James, and he'll talk to anyone. But my point is that, yeah, I think what you're saying is completely accurate.
No, he is. He's a great guy. I mean, Gavin will talk to anyone. And he's very funny on WhatsApp too. He says some of the most outlandish shit. I really do enjoy talking to him. But you know, unfortunately, the whole Milo fucked it up for everyone. Frankly,
He did. You're not wrong.
It was really sad what he did because I think we'd gotten somewhere in the end.
Sorry, I just like that comment. That's funny.
we got somewhere in the end after months and months and months of trying, and then in 4 days he screwed it up with that comment about the Muslims and stuff. So yeah, that was sad. But anyway, is what it is. Any more questions?
I don't see any more popping up at this point in time. Oh, yes, I do. Can you bring Sargon of Akkad down?
Carl Benjamin. Yeah, it's interesting. I think we're actually interviewing him for our next issue. And he has been on my radar for some time. He is keen to come to Australia. I'm pretty sure of that because I think I saw a transcript of a discussion that he had with the Spillers. But again, it would need to be part of a bigger lineup.
Wait, did the Spillers? Oh, were they part of the Gavin McInnes? I only remember the Spillers trying to bring down. Oh no, you're right.
They had a whole lineup. They had a whole lineup of people.
That's true.
Milo
I forgot Gavin was part of it.
Who was that woman that they want to bring out as well? I forget her name now. She's not very big.
Her name is Ashley Whitty.
It's an older woman.
Ann Coulter.
Ann Coulter, yeah. So they had her a whole heap. And Sargon of Akkad, was one of them. Carl was one of them. But I mean, that whole thing was a disaster. It didn't work out well. And you know, they basically just packed up shop.
True, but that's because one tried to outdo the other, and you know, the Spillers have always been lovely to me. But in terms of they were dealing with someone who. Milo in this case, who was so big for their britches, such a diva that I think his head exploded.
Yeah, look, he'd had a lot of success with what we did here. I mean, we promoted the hell out of it.
As you should.
And he did very, very well. I think they sort of underestimated how big the job really was. They didn't actually realize that we had teams of people on it. You know, and I dedicated half my
That's true, Neil.
Hey, there's Neil. There you go. Again, I'm not going to get into that. It's between Milo and them, but
of course, we won't.
It was a pretty ugly show, and it was unnecessary as well. You know, it could have been a lot smoother, and he could have come back, and it could have been a very successful tour. But
why would he dox them, and why would he create a whole live stream to being a dick to them? Like Milo's just.
That's something you have to ask him.
Oh yeah, exactly. I've tried to get Milo on. I've texted him 100 times, but he always says, "Yeah, sure," and then he pushes it, and it's not going to happen. So I'm just going to stop texting.
After 100 times, it's a good effort though on your part.
I'm pretty persistent. That's the thing. That's the reason I get the guests that I get. People go, "Oh, you're so well connected. How do you do it?" I'm like, I don't know. This interview happened because of Dean McRae.
Yeah, well, I like Dean. Dean's
there he is.
There he is. Just finished work.
Dean has become my best friend. Like, I don't even like libertarians. And I'm just kidding. Just joking, libertarians. But no, he's been really nice. And like the fact that I can get like really cool people to interview, like the last 3 have been because of him. You, the one I had before, and the one before that were all because of Dean.
Yeah, I'm not so sure I've been with your particular audience, but I'm always happy to help out someone on the on the other side of
you've been very nice to me. I think my audience is quite varied. It's just what I don't like about my audience is the puritanical nature of it. Like I love them and they will always watch me and I appreciate it, but I don't like it when it's automatically Dia's sold out because she's talking to the king of porn or whatever the hell they're saying. Like, I haven't engaged in pornography, so why does me speaking to you equate to me selling out? I don't understand. Like, but that's okay. That's how they.
But Paul Murray said this recently. He said, just because I have someone on my show, it doesn't mean I agree with them. Because he was getting flack for putting McInnes on his show.
Yeah.
There you go.
You told me to stop lumping him. Fair enough, Kenji. You're a good guy.
But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're fighting the same fight. We just want to.
Yeah. Mine is more Christian. Yours is more freedom of speech.
Well, yeah. I mean, my fight will protect your right to practice your religion the way you want. And that's at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. People's rights and their potential need to be protected. That's the basis of conservatism. We've built something magnificent as a society, especially a Western society. Yeah, we've done all sorts of atrocious things over the last 2,000 years. But what race hasn't? Seriously. But good things, are easily destroyed and they're not easily created, and we need to protect them. And if that makes me a conservative for the first time in my life, then so be it. But I enjoy the work we do. It's fun. Seriously, most people would kill to do what I do. I know, and
I'm doing it at a very, very shitty capacity to you. This is an interesting question. Are you okay to answer it?
Yeah. His problem with me is that he used to work for me, and I found out he was doing some things that he shouldn't be doing, and I sacked him. Very straightforward.
Yeah, there you go. That's nice and interesting. Okay, this is one from Just Saying. He's a regular viewer. Does Damien believe that everyone has a right to question historical events? I would agree with that, without the fear of going to jail, e.g. the Holocaust. I think he's referring to Germany and other countries throughout Europe that basically say that if you question the Holocaust, you should. Basically, if you have a thought crime, you should go to prison.
No, not at all. No,
yeah.
Of course you should be able to question events. I mean, look,
you should question everything.
Without being called a conspiracy theorist or a denier. Climate change is a classic, isn't it? You're a denier. Like, the science has been settled. Everybody knows the world's going to end. The world was flat at one point, and the science was settled, and anyone that disagreed with it was burnt at the stake.
What's cool? The Bible always stated that the world was a sphere, but no one picked up on that for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Sorry, keep going. I just thought that was a little interesting tidbit.
Out of the Bible. We studied it every single day for a very, very long time, and I'm very concerned about some of the shit that I read in the Bible. But
I'm concerned by some of the Old Testament stories for sure. God has a lot of wrath.
They were smoking some seriously good shit.
Come up there to Sydney one day, and I'm gonna have a Bible study with you.
Oh, no, don't do that. It'll end up a Penthouse forum story. We don't want that shit. But no, look, of course you've got the right to question these things. Does anyone really believe that 12 Arabs hijacked 4 planes on the same day and managed to hit 4 government targets on their own with no help?
Careful, you're gonna come out as a conspiracy theorist. Careful.
That's what I come out as. This is the honest truth. Many years ago, the same government tried to sell us the story that one bullet went through Kennedy twice. A lot of people don't remember that, right? Now, governments have been trying to sell us bullshit for a very, very long time. I'm sorry, I don't buy everything they say. And that's where Penthouse has actually done so well. We question these things. We take them to task over it. We do investigate.
So this is a question to me. Hi, Zeb. I got to get you back on my channel at some point, Zeb. Zeb came on my channel a couple of months ago. He was a former Mormon, a former Satan worshipper, and a former white supremacist. And he's now a born-again Christian, and he's married. It's a really cool story. It's one of my best live interviews, I thought. Sorry, anyway, Zeb's asking, have you been able to schedule an interview with Amir Safarati? No, I haven't. Can you please help me with that? Amir is someone I've been wanting on my channel for a while. Anyway. But thanks for asking, Zeb. I was going to ask you, actually. Now, a lot of us, this is my question, it just came to me. A lot of us on the right, particularly conservatives, get really frustrated when people like Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, Taylor Swift seem apolitical and just release music, and then all of a sudden start promoting Hillary Clinton or whatever it may be. Now, I read the article. I forgot which one it was, but it was in here where you guys basically no, it was the same one by Gideon. He says in the article, he says that the magazine has changed and it's evolved. Personally, I like the fact that I hate it when singers do it. I hate it when actors do it. But I think it's okay for a magazine to do it because it gives you something more of substance to read. Additionally, everyone seems to be going left. A lot of magazines, even Teen Vogue, as mentioned in the article, has gone left, encouraging kids to be concerned about climate change and how white you are and how bad that is. I like that there is a magazine that's a little bit more right, because all of the political evolutions that these magazines are doing is all left. What are your thoughts on the fact that people like Lady Gaga or whatever are going political, and that you guys sort of took a risk and went political, but to the right? Because that in itself is a risk.
We've always been political. I mean, that's the first thing. And again, we never really took any sides. I mean, we slapped the Liberal Party just as hard as we slapped the Labor Party in our stuff.
Yeah, and it's not against the religious right too, to be fair. So you are being objective.
Yeah, no, we hit everybody the same way if we don't like what they're doing. If what they're doing, basically threatens people's rights or their ability to to live a free life, for lack of a better word. If anything is there, I can answer that Andrew Cooper's question in a second.
Yeah, no. Before it appears on my right hand side.
With the Lady Gaga stuff,
it's so frustrating. I hate it when they do it.
You've got to remember the arts community are all generally from the left.
Yes.
And you've got to look at publishing as well. Generally, those people are Chardonnay socialists that come from inner cities as well. They generally grow up in universities which indoctrinate them with left-wing thinking. So it makes eminent sense that these publications and other things are often left-leaning. As I say, for us, when you sort of draw the graph left-right, we sort of sit in the middle. And then when you draw authoritarian, libertarian, we sort of sit halfway down the libertarian line. We're not full libertarian, but at the same time, we're certainly not centrist on that.
We're all a little bit libertarian, I think. I think every human being has a slight libertarian element to them. Sorry, keep going.
But they want to be left alone. People want to be left alone. And at the end of the day, government is a complete fuck up. Only government is really incompetent enough to be in the business of forcibly extracting money from people and still come out bankrupt when you look at it. So, now this Andrew Cooper thing, that's fascinating. This is the first time those laws have actually been put into use. And
I did a video about it yesterday. It's ridiculous.
What scares me is the fact that the minister's not responsible for it. This is coming straight out of the department. The Attorney General can't do anything about it. Yes, someone did kill Epstein.
For sure.
Yeah, that's bloody obvious. But we'll find out.
They're having
right after we find out who killed Kennedy. But what's really scary with those laws, and in fact, we've got a piece coming out about that. David Leinholm's writing a piece for us on this about the anti-terror laws. They are scary as fuck because they can hit anybody. And Andrew Cooper, I mean, come on, really? Cooper's a spy? Are you serious? What gave it away? His penchant for martinis and beautiful women, or the fact that he's got dashing good looks? Seriously, the guy is not a spy.
No.
He's a bloke. I know Andrew very well. He's a lovely guy. He's not a fucking spy.
Yeah, he seems okay. I'm sorry. So this is a question from Kenji. How do laws in Australia, especially the lack of explicit freedom of speech laws, affect publications like Penthouse? That's actually a really good question, Kenji.
It's a very good question. So we don't have a constitutional right to free speech. It's implied, which means that ultimately the government lets us say what we want until we say something they don't like, and then they sort of arrest us and throw us in jail.
Have you not been watching? Sorry, keep going.
Yes, I'm Greek Cypriot. My father's Greek Cypriot.
So
we know all about in terms of Penthouse, it was fascinating actually. Is he from America, that chap?
Kenji? No, he's Australian, half Japanese, half white.
Right, okay. So in Australia, prostitution is legal, but making pornography is illegal. That's fascinating stuff.
That is a weird understanding. It should either be both or not both.
Yeah, I find it fascinating. But we're heavily regulated. Obviously, we have to put tags on all that stuff. M15, R-rated. So we're an M15 magazine, which means, you know, there's absolutely no genitalia whatsoever, and you know, it's only shadows and all this sort of thing.
Yeah.
But then the R-rated stuff, which is mostly coming off the shelves now anyway, is yeah, it's pretty.
No genitalia shown.
Donuts. Yeah, it's just donuts. But yeah, it's. I mean, it's actually interesting he asked that question. I've been asked to do a debate at Macquarie University. Is pornography harmful?
Yes.
And my answer is yes, but they want me to defend it.
No, you can't. Unless you should, maybe for the experiment, the social experiment of it. But yeah, you'd be selling your soul to defend that.
Oh, look, I'm just going to get drunk and go in there and have some fun. But
yeah.
I think they said we can't find anybody else to defend internet pornography. I can defend it on a free speech basis, but I can't defend it on what it does to people that are susceptible to, you know, problems with it.
Well, the more exposure to porn, the more I think you desire the physical act, and the more you lose an ability to self-restrain. And then things like, I'm just telling you what I think. I think also the virginal lifestyle has all but been deleted. Like, it's basically, oh, how embarrassing, that person's still a virgin or whatever it is. Like, you know, it's like that stuff isn't valued anymore.
When I was a kid, though, we didn't have internet. So believe me, if we did, we'd be.
Is Emma right about what? Sorry, keep going. Emma Eros, you don't know who that is?
Not off the top of my head. It sounds familiar, though.
Oh yeah, no, I'll tell you. She is she's a Muslim Australian. She's part of the One Nation Party. Mark Latham and
yeah. I have no idea. She write about what specifically?
Sorry.
What does she write about? What does she write about?
She writes predominantly about her disapproval of Islam in Australia. Yet she's a Muslim herself.
So is Raheem Kassam. I mean, he's
well, he's actually an atheist, but yes, exactly. Anyway, that's who that is. This is a question. Are magazines dead?
No, because I keep printing them. If that was dead, we would have stopped printing them. Look, the magazine is a business card for us.
I did that by accident. The more you lose the ability to perform as a male. Oh, maybe. I didn't think of that. That's because of the thing I was saying about porn and how it makes, because real porn, not a photo of a naked woman, although I do think that's bridging a gap between, whilst I'm here talking about the 40-year-old anniversary edition, I do think that nude women is a bridge to porn, and then porn is a bridge to other things, like maybe animals or I don't know, rape.
So if I watch porn, I'm going to want to have sex with a goat?
No, not at all. But I do think for some sickos out there that it is a bridge. Like, I don't get, it doesn't bother me to see a naked woman at all. Like, I'm not personally offended by it, but I am worried about the state of humanity. And I do think that even as a soft core as your magazine is, it could lead to worse things. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, look, I mean,
although it doesn't personally offend me.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, look, we get this a lot when we deal with the conservatives, especially, and ultimately, my view is this: everything that we do as humans is predicated on sex and reproduction, basically. And you know, life is one big sexually transmitted disease, unfortunately. You know, pornography has existed since people were drawing in caves. They found an Egyptian tomb recently. I was watching on the one of the channels on Foxtel, and someone drew
a stick painting with big circles and dots in the middle.
Yeah, it was a big dick in an Egyptian in a pyramid or something like that. And I thought it was funny. You know, it's like even back then, So, and I'm sure someone, some Egyptian would have walked past at the time and gone, "That's just disgusting." How dare you? But look, I think yes, you're quite right. There is porn that is disgusting, etc. But is that enough for us to get rid of it? Where's the implication on free speech, etc., etc., etc.? And wars have been fought on this, in the courts, etc. And we're still here because we win, and we win all the time. And it's not because believe me, there's a lot of prudes that sit on those Supreme Court benches. It's not about the fact. It's not about the porn. It's about what if you outlaw one thing, it sets up a very slippery slope for people to outlaw.
I agree with that, but
no, it does.
We were living in a different.
You can't just outlaw porn. So free speech is an absolute, right? You either have it or you don't.
I'm an absolutist with free speech. Yes, I agree with that.
You have to, because if you start, let me put it to you this way. Jordan Peterson said this as well. I'm not often fond of quoting him, but he's quite right. He said in an interview, he said, hate speech is real. Anyone who denies that hate speech exists is an idiot. Everyone knows it exists, but who's going to define it? Who's going to regulate it?
Well, Stephen Crowder says that. Stephen Crowder says there's no such thing as hate speech, that everything is free speech.
Well, yeah, that's true, but you can say things that are hateful, which I would determine is hate speech. But who's going to define it? And then ultimately, when you define it, who's going to regulate it? And that poses a very big problem to society, right? Because if you start with that, then a generation later, they say, well, that's a precedent. And so we're going to do something else. And then the slope just gets slipperier and slipperier, right? And we've spent 50 years defending this, 55, defending it against people that have tried. Now, yes, 35 years ago, 40 years ago, the right tried. They failed. Now the left is trying. Now imagine if the right succeeded, right? And they set that precedent. Imagine how much...
I would have been on the right side back then. If I was alive at the age that I am now, in the 60s and the 70s, I would have tried to outlaw it. But now we're in a different time. We're at a different mindset. The political
it doesn't suit you. If you try to outlaw it then, but not now, it's only because the left is trying to impose their beliefs on you and limit your right to free speech. But
if I
the biggest defenders of free speech, it's very simple. You have to defend it regardless of what the other side is saying. I hate the stuff the left says. It gives me the absolute shits, but I have to defend their right to say it.
I agree with that, but I'm new to that. Like I've only believed that for the last not when I say new, like it's at least 8 to 10 years that I've thought that. But prior to that, I genuinely do believe that if I was living in a different time, in a different era, it's like when people say to me now, "Dear, why do you you seem to be so sympathetic to the white nationalist cause?" I get asked that, and I'm like, well, I'm not a white nationalist, and yes, maybe if they had their way and it was a different time, I'd be deported. I'm not blind to that, but I'm also not blind to the fact that if I was in the 70s now or 60s and I could ban pornography, I would, because it means that it would allow more not to say that sin wouldn't exist and rape and all of that wouldn't exist, it would, but it might be less. We wouldn't be feeding it. We're feeding it.
The problem with that line of thought is very simply, if you impose your beliefs on someone based on that, then when someone else or another group like the left comes along and tries to victimize a whole new generation, they will use the precedent that you set back then and say, we did it back then, we did it for pornography, now we need to do it for something else. And they may do it for religion, they may do it for anything they disagree with, and they can because they have the power.
But that's an exception to the rule. For example, if I could stop abortions from existing, if I could stop a mother from killing her baby, I would. And so that is where I'm not a libertarian. That is where I'm very... true, but that's very authoritarian of me. And I acknowledge that. And it's the same with porn. If I could stop it, I would. And I know that sounds bad, even though right now I'm here sitting down with you saying that, yeah, let everyone do you and I'll do me and so on and so forth. And I even acknowledge that what is in this magazine isn't pornography. I don't think it's sex scenes. I don't think there's any penetration. I think it's, and it doesn't offend me, as I said, but
it was penetrating the donut hole, to be fair.
Sorry?
He was penetrating that donut hole. Have a look. She's putting her finger in the donut. That's penetration.
I suppose, but that I just took that as humor. That didn't even actually bother me.
I'm only joking. The issue is this: when you've got an ideology, and I had this discussion with someone the other day, when you've got an ideology that is so hell bent on a particular issue or whatever, the only way they can make it survive is with violence. This is how fascist and communists, on which were supposed to be on the opposite sides of the spectrum, and they're not. They're very much the same thing. When you look at it, regardless of the economics of private ownership, they're very much the same thing. The only reason these regimes need to resort to violence is because most people don't agree with everything that they're saying, right? So, you can't. It's very hard when you're a defender of free speech. It really is, because you have to defend people you don't agree with. And that's something that we struggle with. I struggle with it personally every single day. Like I listen to some of these nutcases on Q&A, and I think to myself, these people are nut jobs. If I would, if it was up to me, I'd outlaw them, but I can't, because you can't set that precedent. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No, I understand what you're saying. This is one of my moderators. She reckons that you are complicit with the many problems in society because of...
I probably am, but I'm also fighting for her right to say that. The only reason that she has the right to stand up and say that is because people like me are fighting for her. And she's welcome.
Well, that's the thing. Everyone in this chat has been either very lovely towards me, very lovely towards you, or being completely the opposite. But that's fine. Like, they have the right to say that.
And the only reason they have the right to say it is because people like me keep fighting for it.
Mm.
And that's the reality. I'm not a martyr. It's just the truth. That's what we do. And it's a very sad. Someone has to keep fighting. I mean, we've come so far. It's 2020 almost, and we still have to fight for our right for free speech. And this is just nonsense.
Yes, every person will one day have to answer to God, including Damien. I agree, Zed.
I look forward to meeting him. Actually, I've got a lot of questions.
Yeah, fair enough.
Especially the Old Testament.
Yeah, I agree with that. The Old Testament God is more interesting, but much more angry. Are we equating public nudity / publication of nudity with free speech? Should nudity be equated with free speech? And does free speech necessarily allow for nudity? No, we're talking about articles. There are articles.
Yeah, nudity is an article. It's photography. It's an art.
Whoops. How would you respond to that question? Oh,
well, the nudity is an article, and so yes, people have the right to take photos of themselves nude if they want. Yeah, of course, it's a form of free speech.
I disagree.
I don't remember the second half of the question.
No, that's okay, but I disagree. Like the whole thing isn't nudity. In fact, there's so many articles. There's actually very little nudity.
Well, we're famous for the nudity. I mean, you've got to remember.
No, I know that.
Do you know why they put nudity in these magazines? These guys were so crazy that all their ideas were so crazy. The only way they could get them out there is to do something that no one else was doing. So they put pictures of naked women in the magazine. Yeah, they're not. Yeah, that's an ad. That's not.
No, no, I'm just showing people that there are words, and that, like, Margaret keeps telling me not to show the images, but what the hell? I'm not showing the images. I'm showing are okay.
Yeah, he's not nude, thank God.
No, he's not. Like, I was showing. I'm not showing anything. I mean, at the start, I was showing a little bit of the nudity just to show people what the level of it is. But I'm not going to sit here and say I love nudity. But I mean, men do. This is a reality to the world. Men like nudity.
We don't even need to put nudity in it. I mean, at the end of the day, people get their fix from the internet when it comes to that stuff, not from us. The only reason we keep it is because it's a big finger to the establishment. It's the only reason we do it. It's because we can, and we're going to continue to do so. As I say, we have a lot of fun doing what we do, and we don't apologize for it.
Wow, Margaret's really angry at you for some reason. I'm not going to treat you that way. I believe.
I certainly hope so. It would be a VIP table with all my friends, because we're all going to hell, actually.
It would be a VIP table? No, yeah. Margaret is one of the greatest human beings on the planet. She just seems particularly annoyed today. This is from my friend Zeb. For it is written, as I live, saith the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue shall confess to God. Romans 14:12. So then every one of us shall give account of himself to God. I know, it's going to be a scary day, Judgment Day. I've committed a lot of sins. No one's perfect.
Doesn't the Catholic Church allow you to buy your way out of that?
You can buy your way out of that. All you have to do is a couple of Hail Marys and whip yourself on the back.
Are they still doing that, are they? I thought they're taking credit card now.
The Jesuits do that. Look, apparently the Sinister Slayer is quite annoyed that you don't have trans models on. He really wants trans models.
I'm sure he is. He can. I can send some round to him if he wants. I'm sure we can dig some up for Neil any day. Don't worry about that. Does he want them cut or uncut? I'm just curious.
Probably. Ooh, maybe a bit of both. No, I don't know. I don't know what his preference is. I think he prefers born females.
I'm sure he does.
I hate having a bath. I do hate baths. I never bathe. I only shower. How do they know these things about me?
You've obviously bathed with them, or I don't know.
Yeah, with my promiscuous reputation. That's a joke, obviously. This is a stupid question, but do you know the answer to it?
None.
Yeah, well, there you go.
I only have atheists, ironically. Seriously, it happens to everyone that works for me is an atheist. I'm the only religious one.
Religious? I think you should use that term as loosely as possible. No offense.
I didn't say which religion I subscribe to. I said I'm religious.
I know. You told me you were Jesuit Catholic.
I was an educated Jesuit Catholic. But doesn't mean I subscribe to the Catholic faith.
No, you're correct about that.
Once they sort out their pedophilia problems, I'm happy to return to the church.
Yeah, I know. My family used to be Catholic, and they all left. Well, not the ones in Colombia. They're still very active. But the ones in Australia, none of us are Catholic. All right, this is a good question from Kenji. The Hustler magazine versus Falwell case in America dealt with why it may be considered freedom of speech / expression to publish nudity or sexually explicit content. I don't think that's for you. I think that's more so him answering the question for Margaret.
It's interesting. If he actually is he local? This chap, Kenji? Or he's from
Kenji lives in Victoria, but he said that he has met you before and he has your business card somewhere, and that he's jealous that I'm interviewing you.
Oh right, okay, thank you.
He has a YouTube channel too, if you ever want to.
Well, Falwell took on a couple, but he was a very big adversary of Penthouse, and Penthouse beat him in court too. But he was the head of the church, the moral majority, and he sued Penthouse for publishing an article or an interview with him. Fascinating story, actually. Yeah. Anyone that's interested in the history that's not actually hung up on the religious side of this particular discussion should get a movie called Filthy Gorgeous, the Bob Guccione story. It's a documentary on him and Penthouse and all the stuff that they achieved and all the things that they did. He actually did a lot for Vietnam vets too. He's got a statue of him in Washington for all the money and stuff that he raised for Vietnam vets when other people wouldn't do it.
Yeah, this is a lefty. I don't know how this lefty got onto my channel, but
no, I'm actually in a relationship, so
I know. And your baby is so cute.
So, yeah, he is. He's gorgeous. Absolutely.
He's pretty damn cute. Yeah, I don't know how that lefty got on, but that's all right.
No, that's okay. He's asked a very, very legitimate question.
And this is another question from the same lefty. How much money does Damien steal through his scams? I don't know what scam he's talking about, but apparently you're a scammer.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure about that. I haven't run many scams lately. I wish I did.
Well, I'm actually excited for what you have in store next year for your incoming scams. Those will be great.
Yeah, that'd be great if that's what you want to call them. Absolutely.
I'm assuming that's what they mean because I don't know what I know it's not a scam. But yeah.
We sell magazines. We sell advertising. I don't know what scam. That's a scam in itself, frankly. But anyway.
Yeah. Look, I think we're done. I've asked all the questions I personally wanted to ask of you. This is a good question from the Canadian. Scribble Squire, has Damien seen the Red Pill movie and what does he think of it? I thought it was a pretty good film.
I have actually not, and I really, really want to. But when it came out, my partner got pregnant, and obviously everything got.
Oh, that's when you got your son, yeah.
Crazy in the house, so I haven't seen any good movies since then. It's been about a year and a half now, 2 years. But no, I do want to see it. And
it's good. But did you see the interview on Sunrise with Andrew O'Keefe? I just wanted to punch him in the face. How rude he was to her.
I didn't see that. I hate Sunrise.
Oh, good. You should hate them.
No, it does my head in. They're so rude to us as well.
They've been with you? Yeah, I'm not surprised.
They hate us. Well, most mainstream media does. I mean, Sky News, the News Corp papers like us, and you know, sort of Alan Jones. That's pretty much it, really. Everybody else absolutely detests us, which as I said, I don't give a fuck about. I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to make money.
No, that's fair enough.
And make a difference in the world if I can do so.
Yeah, exactly right. All right, let's go to any other questions worth reading. Oh, this one's silly. I think this is more of a joke. But Damien, will you be hiring Dia for a future shoot?
I don't know. I've only seen her head.
Well, I wouldn't do anything nude. I'd definitely do I'd write an article for you.
Send it across. Let's have a look.
Yeah. All right. I think we're good. Is there anything else you want to say? We can, like, Penthouse magazine has been going strong in Australia for 40 years.
40 years. It's a great issue. If you're interested in the history, go buy it. It's a collector's issue. Aside from that, no, look, thank you so much. It was a very, very pleasant way to spend my evening. And that was less abuse than I expected. Although that lady,
I got the majority of it, actually.
Yeah, no, I can see that. But
yeah, I'm a degenerate thought.
A degenerate thought. That hoe over there. That's a fantastic little acronym.
I'm a thought because I interviewed a human being. That's why. Because
Damien,
I interviewed.
a degenerate thought. I don't know about degenerate.
If they knew, like I go to Bible study, like on Mondays, I go to church on Sundays, but I'm a thought, you know. They don't know who I date. Like, I'm so private about that. Like, it's okay. They can say what
haters are gonna hate. Just make sure they spell your name right.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. For those of you who are polite, especially, Zeb, I'm so glad to see that you popped up in the chat and that you were kind. Thank you very much. God bless all of you. And next week, my guest is James Fox Higgins. We'll be promoting RRTV, and stay tuned for that. And tomorrow will be the Uncuckable, so tune in for that as well. All right, see you later, guys. I'm going to end the broadcast. And thank you, Damien.
No worries. Thank you.
No worries. I'm just going to end the broadcast.